Hello, welcome to video number 4 of the Cyclekart build series, the Duesenberg, 1913 Duesenberg. Building this for my dad, just in case you haven't seen the other videos. We've already got the frame pretty well done. Got the rear axle mounted. We're working on motor placement now. And while we're doing that, it's probably a good idea to mention to you on the Torque-Averter. This was a used motor and used setup that came, looks like it's about 5 years old based on the engine date code, 2015. And the Torque-Averter belt was installed backwards. There's a note on here that says this side to engine. So it's important that this arrows point toward the motor. On this one, they're backwards, and if you, I don't know if you can see on the video, but it's pretty well burned up and torn up on the side here. These are one direction, so they have to be installed the correct direction. If they don't, you'll burn up your belt. And you can see this is lipped. There's a lip here, kind of protruding up on both sides, well, mostly on this side, and it's burned off on this side. So it's just torn this belt all up. This will need to be replaced. But I'll show you how I'm going to clock the Torque-Averter. A couple guys have asked what's the best way to do that, and it really depends on how your frame is set up. If your engine's up above on top of the frame rails, below the frame rails, or on top of the axle, kind of depends on where it's at, is where you're going to clock your Torque-Averter. And I'll explain what that means when I flip the camera around. Okay, so I've got the frame up on some bricks just to kind of elevate it up off the workbench so I can work on it. I've got the sprocket just sitting here loose on the axle right now. And the Torque-Averter, I've got it, this is pretty much the way mine is on my existing cart. Something to be aware of when you put it at this angle, these little ribs in here will interfere. The chain is going to want to run right kind of across here, right where these ribs are at. You'll need to clearance these ribs by grinding them off with a flapper disc or something like that. Also, on the, at least on the Predator, this little boss is touching the gas tank, this little rib on the gas tank, so this will be grinded down. We don't typically use the covers that come with it, so you don't need to worry about that, but this will need to be flapper disc down. I can't tighten this up right now because it's gonna, because of this little small boss on here, it's going to keep this thing from aligning properly. So that'll have to be ground down before I do anything. I've messed around with a little bit of placement on, so these different holes will allow you to put it in a different position as you twist this. It can go straight ahead like this. The point is you want to get the motor as far forward as you can so that the tail section can be smaller, because the further back this goes, the wider your tail is at the back end, especially with the stock muffler and the stock air cleaner. You can see how wide this is. On my motor, I've got just a header coming off of here, so this profile is much smaller on my other carts, and this is not here. This is just have an air cleaner popping out of here. So my dad wants to keep this all stock, so we're accommodating that. I'm trying to get the motor down. Right now it's about level with the bottom of the frame here. If I were to weld something under here, it would directly fit underneath the motor, which is fine. This is 3 inches down below. Let me come around this side over here. And you can see there's still plenty of air here, room for the frame for air to flow, even if we don't put much of opening here and we just have access for the choke and the gas. So it might just have a small access point here and some place to get a hold of the pull start. So you can see here, right now this is about, if I remember right, I set this in here yesterday afternoon. Sorry, I got my tape measure. Where the motor's at, it's about 4 3/4 inches to the center. If you were to measure at the motor case, if you measure here, it's about 3.5. On my motor, it's almost 5.5. So it's my motor's further back that way. I'm not sure why that is. Anyway, maybe it was because of the way the frame was set up. But anyway, this is, I think this is where we're going to go. I'm going to try one more clocking. I'm going to try to clock this thing down below the motor. I'm going to see what that looks like, if that would work or not. I'm trying to get the motor down as low in the chassis as I can get it, for a couple reasons. One, for the body work to be easier to make, more compact, because on the Inspiration car, that's really hard to see in this picture, but this tail is pretty abrupt. It doesn't go very far back beyond the wheels. So we're trying to keep it a little bit in that vein of what it's going to look like. So that's the idea of that. So I'm going to take the Torque-Averter off and clock it in a different direction now. Okay, before we go on, I figured once you get your Torque-Averter, when I first got mine, I was a little confused as to how it exactly went together. So in the box, you're going to get this little bushing. It's just a little silver bushing. That goes on the shaft first, and that's just spacing this away from your aluminum housing. The next thing to go on is this part here. This goes against the, there's a little keyway in there. There's a keyway on your shaft, so it's going to go against that. With the slides on there like that. You see clearances of bolts. I don't have the bolts tightened up, but and then There's a little brass bushing that goes on top of that. Just rides right on top of there. That's where your belt's going to ride on this surface. And the next part to go is, I'll just take this apart so you can see how this works or how this looks. Oh, sorry, there's a part that looks like this. And this has got a keyway on it also. And that's going to go on there. It's going to not look like it's going to go on very far. It's just going to go on far enough to contact it. And then this next part, which is the clutch portion of it, there's little hole, ribs on there, and just line those up with that and slide that in place. There's that. And then your outer part, which is this part here, it's kind of a flat sides on it. You're going to find the flat sides on here, and that's going to sit right on there, just like that. And then you're going to get your bolt, and that's going to go in here. I'm not going to tighten this up right now, but that's just how it goes together. So when you get your Torque-Averter out of the box, it's a little bit confusing. Oh, and before you do that, you put your belt on. I'm sorry, the belt will go on before you put these on. Let me show you what that looks like. I forgot that part. You pull this part off. So the belt would go on, again, the side to the engine, so it's going to go over the top of this. You're going to hook it over that right on top of the brass deal. And this whole thing could go into one piece if you wanted to. Again, it's just going to find that keyway and slide it right on, and you bolt it down. You're just going to snug it down. You don't have to torque this to crazy, because if you ever have to take it off, it's a real pain. What I recommend for that is a tool kind of like this. It's one of these little flexible, I think it's an oil filter remover, but it's designed for that. So you kind of put it around it, and you can hold this thing, tighten it in also to loosen it back up. So when you go back to torque it down, anyway, that's what you use to hold that in place. And then if you have to take the top part apart up here, the only thing I found for that is a impact wrench would work fine on that. So I'll take this back apart, and we'll clock this Torque-Averter now. I kind of keep the pieces all together so you don't lose anything. And this little bushing comes off of there, so there you go. Okay, so I've got it installed completely vertical. Now we're straight down. This might work. It doesn't really give me any additional clearance as far as moving the motor forward, because it's dangerously close to the clutch area, the chain I mean. It would ride right here, which is very, very close to this, and I'm concerned that's not going to work. And then also it puts it 6.5 inches below the frame rail, which is only about 3 or 4 inches off the ground. So that's a little squirrely. I'm not happy with that. I'm going to try, well, I'm going to try one more setting and see how that goes. I'm just not happy with this one because I think it's going to create too many interference issues. But it's a nice idea. If I raise the motor up, maybe it would work better. Actually, let me try that real quick. Let me put the motor up a little higher in the air and see if that creates any better clearance. Yes, I moved the motor up another 1.5 inches, and it just got too much interference on the where the chain's going to run. So this probably is not going to work. Let's try something. Okay, so I've been working on this off and on over the last couple hours. I think I got this figured out. I'm back to where I started as far as where the Torque-Averter is clocked in relation to the sprocket. We've gone ahead and put the brake caliper disc on here. And the caliper, I was messing around with where we're going to put that. It's going to work out over here. Well, anyway, I have it figured out, so it's going to mount basically, if I can get that in there. Put a blender here. Sorry. I had it all worked out earlier, now I can't get it back on here. Here it goes. So it's going to mount right there with the L bracket. That's going to work out pretty well. So we ended up getting the motor 2 inches closer than my previous setup. Let me find a tape yardstick here. So we're going to give you a reference from the housing. You can see from there, it's roughly 4 inches. On the other one's about 6, and from the motor area to the axle about 5 inches. Just kind of give you guys a reference. Then I've also messed around with getting it centered in the chassis. I've done a few things. I just kind of put this here to hold it in place. I've got the center marked. Working out to get these, because they protrude quite a ways, the muffler and the air cleaner. So trying to get those centered in the frame in relation to each other, and I've done that. Works out to this is about 1 3/4 inches away at this bolt, and a piece of metal in the way here. Hang on a second. Sorry guys. I'll walk around the chassis. At the pull starter, about 2 7/8 from this, center line roughly, if you measure right between here. That seems like it's really offset to one side, and it sort of is, but the air cleaner and the muffler for this type of tail section, it's going to be important. And I've got the wire form that I built for my other car. I'll kind of set this on here real quick, kind of give you an idea what we're basically going to achieve. So the idea is for this wire form to fit over it and to not touch. If I pull it forward a little bit, it clears here. I might clearance this a little bit of this muffler off here. I might take this off and either cut out a piece of this. All this is a heat shield, which you don't need because it's going to be inside the body, and the air cleaner's got plenty of room. So I think that's going to work out pretty good. It makes the tail just about 8 feet from the nose. If I use that same wire form, and I might do that, I might start again because I've got quite a bit of room up here. I could probably get this a little lower. We'll see. The important thing is now to get this motor mount placed. And I was looking at my other one, and it's kind of relieved. I'll show you real quick the way the back end of this works on this one. You can kind of see this drop. Oh, sorry, this car cover's kind of in the way. See, I kind of Z, not really a Z, but just it lowers it down about 1.5 inches. That's kind of what we're doing here, except I want to make it a little bit simpler. I've got some pieces of scrap metal just kind of sitting here. So it's going to sit on top of the metal, the engine plate, and weld on both sides. This is 1-inch square tubing. So across here at the very tail end. And then I might put another cross member underneath it and do that same treatment on my other car where it kind of goes down and then over and then back up. Sorry, my hand's right in front of the camera. I'll draw that on a piece of paper. So I was making some measurements here, just kind of laying everything out. So what I meant to say was it would kind of come down like at an angle, go underneath the motor, and then come back up. Just so it's not so visible from the side. Or I might just straight go up, put a piece of tubing straight across the bottom underneath the motor, just to give it some strength. So we're going to have some metal coming forward, some 1-inch metal from the very back cross member in front of the sprocket all the way to the back. And this isn't going to be this far, but it's going to be right around here somewhere. Back of the motor should be right around here. So this is going to be gone. And probably 2 cross members here and then 2 cross members here. And the idea is with these motors, sometimes you get some flex at this point. As the motor torques this way or that way, you end up getting some chain slack and it makes some popping noises and tries to throw your chain off. So the point is to get this motor mount super strong. So I've got this pretty well mocked up. I'm going to go get a piece of metal cut, get this in place as a cross member. I'll have to take this all out of the way and do that. I'll mark where it needs to be. And then put another cross member forward of it and then put the motor plate down. And this takes some monkeying around and trial fitting, so it takes a while. So be patient. It's worth doing it right. All right, so a couple days ago, in between the last video and this one, or the last segment, I changed my mind. I decided to put the framing members underneath the motor plate. So the motor plate's going to mount under here. The frame's upside down right now. So I've got these welded across. This one is at 13 inches to this point from the frame rail. 13 inches from this frame rail to here. And this other one is 20.5 or 21.5 to the outside edge right here from the cross member. They're parallel with each other. The motor plate is going to sit. I'm sorry, wasn't really ready for this. Under here, motor's going to sit on there. Anyway, I'm going to do a little more work on this to make these look a little nicer. I think I'm going to put a 90 degree on here, a 45 degree bevel. So when you see it from the side, this won't be quite so visible. And then there'll be additional cross members coming from the front here to stiffen this part up. And that ought to make it, as Dennis Thomas says, battleship quality. So yeah, coming along. Okay, as I'm working on the motor mount here, I thought I'd show you how I line this up. So I've got a little square clamp down to the frame rail, and I've got it marked where the sprocket needs to go. So I've lined that up with the sprocket, and then the motor kind of lines up off of that. I take a yardstick and put it against your Torque-Averter, and it'll kind of help you line this up. If you can see where I just kind of put it up against the pulley there, and it'll kind of show you that it's right next to the sprocket, and then if you put it on top of the sprockets, that lines up. And if you put it on the other side, it's a little wider. You see how much more of a gap there is when you put it on the other side. Anyway, a little hard to see. Sorry, I'm holding the camera trying to do this all at one time. So I've skipped ahead a little bit, and I've gone ahead and got these lower deals mounted, and then I've capped them off and put a kind of a 45-degree angle on them. The motor is sitting in place right now. It is welded here and here, and I've got a tack weld just holding the motor plate in place right now. So now that I got it all squared up, I'm gonna go ahead and weld this on, take the motor out of the way, of course, weld that on, and then I'm gonna put a brace to the front. So let's do that now. Okay, so making some good progress today. The motor plate is mounted, welded on all four corners. I'm gonna turn it over and weld from underneath as well. Strengthens this weld on these two cross braces, and kind of give you an idea of the measurement. And yours is gonna be different. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my tape measure. To the front of the plate is about 10 inches. To the back of the plate, from the cross member, about 22 inches from the front cross member. And the front cross member is roughly, what would this be? 5 3/4 inches from the cross member. Kind of give you an idea of motor placement. When you lay yours out, your motor might be in a different spot, so it's up to you where you want to put it, what makes sense to you for your build. So this is just how I'm doing this one. Alrighty, so let's get a little more welding. Okay, so I've got it turned upside down on the bench here, and I wanted to show you the cross members from below. I've got them welded in. You don't need to weld all the way across there, just enough to hold it in place. The point is to keep this motor from rocking at all. So that's why we added these extra couple braces here. In my experience, when we drill these holes, this becomes kind of the weak point, and the chassis can flex a little bit under acceleration. So you end up with some chain popping if you don't put some bracing in like this. I was careful not to get this in the way of the sprocket and or the caliper or the disc brake and all that. So it's just 1x1 tubing that was left over from a fence. My dad brought over this. Actually, there's part of it there. He redid one of his RV gates and had this piece we cut off, so I've been reusing some of the steel. That's what these cross members are all made from. 1 inch by 1 inch tubing. Anyway, that worked out pretty good. I'm going to flip it back over and tack up a couple more spots from the back side, and then the motor mount will be pretty well done. So we'll flip it over now. Okay, so the frame's flipped back up, and this is what the motor mount area looks like. When you do this, you're going to put some welds along the edges, so make sure those are flat so your motor doesn't rock around on them. And yeah, so that turned out pretty good. The motor's going to fit in there just fine, nice and square and true, and should not have any chassis flex issues with this. Yeah, so I think the next thing we're going to do is put the motor in it and see how we're going to finish off this back end. I might brace this direction. Let's see what we figure out on that. Okay, there we go. The motor mount is all buttoned up. So I didn't film it, but what I did was I added a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch piece of tube across the top. And then I had this 1/8 or 1/16 inch plate, which I think is 0.63 thickness. And I beveled, I matched the angle basically, because I put this offset a little bit to have a little bit of an angle. And I connected it down here to this 1x1 that's down below. So it made the back end nice and tall, which I think is pretty cool. I've got an idea of what to do with this space once the tail section goes on. Might put brake lights right here. I think that would be really cool if I could make that work. Or maybe just reflector. I think it would look nifty. If I can book up brake lights, I think that's what we'll do. So that's looking pretty good. Pretty pleased with the way that came out. So like I said, each of your carts are going to have a different motor mount position. This one is down pretty much flush with the bottom of the frame rail, below the axle line. The purpose of that is to get this engine down as low as we can and get it centered in the chassis, so when you put the bodywork on it, it's nice and square, or easier to put bodywork around. And these extra braces to keep it from rocking under acceleration. Okay, we're going to call that the end of this video, video number 4 of the 1913 Duesenberg Cyclekart. So in this video we did the motor mount area and got that all buttoned up. And the next video I think we're going to go and do the disc brake mount. That'll be hopefully a quick deal. I think this is going to be plenty strong. Just added a little bit of weight to the back, but that's what you have to do to make it strong enough so it doesn't flex around and pop your chain off. So thanks for watching the video. Appreciate all the new subscribers we got lately. Up over 1,000 subscribers now. We really appreciate that. I'm glad you guys are enjoying the videos. If you have any questions on Cyclekarts, send me a message on the YouTube or look me up on Facebook. The Arizona Cyclekart Club's got a lot of stuff going on. Cyclekartclub.com. And again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.